History is full of epic battles, armies clashing on vast fields, generals making daring maneuvers, and empires rising and falling. But today's story is not about one of those grand battles. It's about Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who conquered much of Europe, getting overrun by rabbits. Yes, rabbits. And not just a few. We're talking hundreds, maybe even thousands. This strange event is one of the most ridiculous episodes in military history. By the early 1800s, Napoleon was one of the most powerful figures in the world. He reformed France, modernized armies, and led campaigns that reshaped Europe. He was a brilliant strategist, feared by kings and admired by his troops. When you hear the name Napoleon, you think of battlefield genius, not running away from fluffy animals. And yet, that's exactly what happened. The story begins after a military campaign, when Napoleon's chief of staff decided to organize a rabbit hunt. Hunting was a common pastime for European elites, a way to relax and show dominance over nature. The idea was simple: gather a bunch of rabbits, release them into the fields, and let Napoleon and his men chase them down. But here's where the plan went terribly wrong. Instead of capturing wild hares, the organizers gathered hundreds, some say over 3,000, tame, farm-raised rabbits. These were not wild animals used to running for their lives. These were domestic rabbits, raised on farms, fed by humans, and very much accustomed to approaching people for food. When the day arrived, Napoleon and his officers prepared for an exciting hunt. The cages were opened, and the rabbits spilled out into the fields. Everyone expected them to scatter instantly, creating the thrill of the chase. But instead of fleeing, the rabbits turned toward the hunters and charged. At first, people laughed. Surely it was a funny coincidence. But the tide of fur kept coming and coming. The rabbits swarmed Napoleon and his officers. They weren't trying to fight, of course. They were hungry. To these domesticated animals, Napoleon and his men didn't look like hunters. They looked like farmers carrying lunch. Rabbits jumped onto boots, climbed up coats, and scrambled toward baskets of food. Soldiers tried shooing them away. Officers swung sticks, but the wave of furry bodies didn't stop. Even Napoleon himself tried to bat them away with his riding crop, but soon he was surrounded on all sides. At some point, the absurdity turned into desperation. The rabbits kept coming, swarming even the carriages and trying to leap inside. Finally, Napoleon, the conqueror of Europe, the man who had faced countless battles, was forced to retreat. He and his entourage ran for their carriages and fled the battlefield, defeated not by muskets or cannons, but by bunnies. The explanation for this bizarre event is simple. Domesticated rabbits don't behave like wild ones. Wild hares would have scattered instantly at the first sign of humans. But farm-raised rabbits associated people with food. When they were released, they didn't think danger. They thought dinner. And when you multiply that instinct by hundreds or even thousands, you get an unstoppable wave of fluff. The story of Napoleon and the rabbits became a legendary tale. Some historians debated how exaggerated it might have been, but there's enough evidence to confirm it really happened. It was even recorded by Napoleon's secretary, who admitted the hunt turned into a complete disaster. For Napoleon, it was just an embarrassing footnote in an otherwise extraordinary career. He went on to win more battles, shape modern Europe, and eventually face his famous defeat at Waterloo. But among all his campaigns, the Battle of the Rabbits remains the most absurd. History often celebrates great victories and dramatic defeats, but it's also made of strange, absurd moments that remind us leaders are still human. And sometimes even the greatest generals can be undone by something as harmless as a hungry rabbit. So the next time you picture Napoleon Bonaparte, don't just imagine him commanding armies across Europe. Imagine him waving his arms in panic as hundreds of rabbits chase him off the field. It's a story so ridiculous it could only be true.